It's Friday, the 4th of February 2022. Welcome to the Fast 5 by Fear and Greed, where we give you the top 5 business stories you need to know in just 5 minutes. I'm Michael Thompson, and good morning, Sean Aylmer.
Good morning, Michael.
All right, 5 stories, 5 minutes. Let's get into it, Sean. Story number 1 today, Westpac is going to cut jobs as it looks to reduce costs in really what's become an ultra-competitive banking sector.
Yes, Westpac, which is the third largest bank in the country, was the first to come out this year with its profit result. Now, it was a fourth quarter cash earnings result. It was up a bit, and the good news was that profits were higher and revenue were higher. The bad news is that profit margins have been reduced. As a result, Westpac will reduce head office by about 20%, and that follows a reduction in more than 1,100 jobs late last year. What's hitting Westpac is the ultra-competitive home lending market, and of course it's hitting all the banks. The increase in the number of people taking out fixed-rate home loans last year has hurt all the banks' margins. In fact, in recent days, both Westpac and Commonwealth Bank have lifted some fixed-rate loans to try and recoup some of that money. Now, of course, Westpac has been the underperformer of the big four banks in recent months, but yesterday its share price jumped more than 2%, pushing it back above ANZ to be the country's third largest bank, behind the Commonwealth and National Australia Bank.
And Sean, while we're talking about large companies on the stock exchange, it leads us very neatly into story number 2. Australia now has a new biggest company, but it's a very familiar old name.
That's true. BHP, the big Australian, is now the biggest Australian. This week, it dumped its dual listing structure of the ASX and the London Stock Exchange in preference to be listed on the local bourse. It means its market capitalisation almost doubled. It's now worth $240 billion, far and away the biggest company on the ASX. Commonwealth Bank is next at $160 billion, followed by CSL at $122 billion. The next 4, so we've got BHP, Commonwealth Bank, CSL, the next 4 are all the banks. National Australia Bank, Westpac, ANZ and Macquarie Group.
Okay, story number 3 today, a pretty serious one, this one, Sean. The Commonwealth is going to establish a task force to examine the alarming number of deaths in aged care.
Yes, it follows an incredible 566 aged care deaths so far this year, many from COVID. 84% of people who died from COVID in the 6 weeks to the end of January were over the age of 70, though obviously not all of them were in aged care. The surge in deaths in aged care facilities is set to continue, unfortunately, with the federal government urging families to consent to vaccine boosters for their older members ahead of a new Omicron wave and the winter flu season. It's a very sad situation that we need to have this inquiry less than 12 months after the final report of the Royal Commission into Aged Care was handed down. Clearly, we haven't done enough to look after elderly Australians.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, story number 4, Sean, and put it really simply, if you want to make money these days, become a software developer or an engineer.
Yes, I think I'm counted out. What about you? Any chance?
Absolutely no chance.
There's an incredible surge in pay rates for experts in cyber roles. That's the bottom line. Now, according to recruitment firm Talent, some technology salaries have jumped 50% in the past 6 months. The biggest rises are for candidates who can write software. So the average salary for CRM software developers, CRM being customer relationship managers, so people who can write code for that and specialise in some of the big platforms like Salesforce or Microsoft Dynamics, their salary jumped more than 50% to $200,000 in the last 6 months of last year. It's not just the top end though. Salaries are rising across the technology workforce. In fact, the average salary for a permanent technology role in Australia jumped 26% in the 6 months to December last year. Annualise that, 50% jump in the average salary for a technology role. Basically, there are fewer candidates out there, more demand. That's how you end up with wage rises.
Now, finally, Sean, story number 5. If you've driven anywhere in Australia recently, you will have noticed something. I'm not talking about the astronomical petrol prices, but I'm talking about the ridiculous number of utes that are on the road now. And we're at the point where 3 of the top 4 selling vehicles are utes.
Yes, exactly right. And I have no idea why, really. Maybe it's got something to do with tax concessions for tradies. The Toyota Hilux was the biggest selling vehicle last month, followed by the Ford Ranger. And coming in at number 4 was the Mitsubishi Triton, all utes, all of them big fuel-guzzling, road-hogging utes. For the record, number 3 was the Mazda CX-5 SUV. Now, the Federal Chamber of Automotive Industry's figures show that almost 76,000 vehicles were sold last month, down from a year ago, but more than January 2020, which of course was pre-pandemic. And that's despite all the supply chain issues out there at the moment. People love their utes.
They certainly do. And I'd just love to see some stats on how many of them ever actually get driven on a dirt road or to a building site. I'm tipping not that many.
Yeah, I guess you're right. People putting their kids' bikes in the back probably, Michael.
Yeah, sounds good to me. All right, that's it. The top 5 business stories in 5 minutes. Thank you very much, Sean.
Thank you, Michael.
It's Friday, the 4th of February 2022. Remember to hit follow on the podcast, and if 5 minutes isn't quite enough, then you can find our longer daily podcast called Fear and Greed on your podcast platform. I'm Michael Thompson, and that was the Fast 5 by Fear and Greed. Have a great day.